Welcome to the Scott Howard Genuine ScLoHo Media and Marketing Podcast. This is an ongoing collection of media, marketing, and personal insights. I've been doing this podcast for 9 years this month, and this is episode number 424 with the title, Talk versus Music on the Radio. There's a rough transcription of this podcast at my website, scotthoward.me. If you'd like to go back and read or check out the links I mentioned, you'll find them there, scotthoward.me. Okay, well, some of my coworkers are not going to like what I'm about to tell you this week. This is the third of a series of articles that I'm writing about my primary radio station, WOWO Radio, that turned 100 years old last year. I first got in the radio business a few decades ago as a teenage radio disc jockey. By the time I was 21, I was back in my hometown of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Along with my fellow jocks, we took our radio station to number one in the ratings. That station was not WOWO, it was WMEE. We had fewer radio stations in Fort Wayne in the early 80s, and each company was only allowed to own one AM station and one FM station per city. WOWO had been the dominant radio station for decades with radio personalities that are still talked about today, and it was a personality-based radio station playing music, some news, some sports, and all the disc jockeys on WOWO were the stars. Meanwhile, across town, a different company had a couple of radio stations, WMEE, which at that time was an AM radio station, and WMEF, which played what they called beautiful music on FM. Now, shortly before I joined WMEE, they moved the top 40 music format to the FM signal, and the battle began. Would the youth-oriented top 40 WMEE beat the legendary WOWO radio station in the ratings? It wasn't immediate, but it did happen. Over time, WOWO's days as a radio station that played music diminished, and they evolved into a talk radio station 30 years ago, which they are today, while WMEE continues to play music. However, back in my young 20s as a WMEE disc jockey, we started promoting what they called commercial-free music sweeps. We talked about those to our listeners. This meant we would go perhaps a full half hour without any ads, which was new at the time. Now, even though I had no interest in advertising back then, I recall thinking to myself that we were setting up something that could be detrimental down the road. By promoting something that was commercial-free, we were planting in our listeners' subconscious minds that commercials were bad and should be avoided. Later in life, I saw music radio stations that were so focused on playing nonstop music that they would do music sweeps of up to 90 minutes followed by 10 or 15 minutes of ads. No one wanted to sit through that many commercials in a row. And even if they didn't change stations, after a few minutes of ads, they would mentally tune out. One more, and this is the part that some of my coworkers will probably not like me talking about. That's the difference between listening to talk radio station like WOWO or a music radio station. When you and I listen to music on the radio, we're listening for songs, for that type of entertainment. When the music stops so the station can play ads, it's actually an irritant to the listener because they just want to hear another song, not ads. However, with talk radio like WOWO, there is no music. It's all talk. Listeners are wanting to hear what people are saying on the radio. So when WOWO plays commercials, it's very similar to the talking they listen to from the hosts and the newscasters. To put it bluntly, ads on talk radio stations like WOWO are less of an irritant than those same ads would be playing on a music radio station. Now, I also have ratings data that shows that WOWO listeners listen longer to WOWO than most other commercial music radio stations. And I also have anecdotal reports from my advertisers on the power of ads on WOWO versus music stations that I could share with you. My last point on the power of talk radio station WOWO has to do with the bond our listeners have with our radio hosts and newscasters. WOWO and our air staff are trusted. When you advertise your business on WOWO, your business gains some of our trust and credibility too. Do you have any questions? Looking for answers? Thoughts of nearly any kind are always welcome. You can find me online at my website, scotthoward.me, and on social media. Just Google ScLoHo. That's spelled ScLoHo, and you'll probably find more of me online. You can drop me a note via email too. It's scott@wowo.com. That's scott@wowo.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.